Today, I would like to read some excerpts or parts out of a book called How Big Is It? A Big Book All About Bigness by Ben Hillman. And I'm just going to read some parts out of each one because it's kind of a longer book. But the neat thing about nonfiction books is you can read just parts of it and still understand what it's about. This page is called Giant Squid, presenting one of the great mysteries of the deep. For decades, people searched for the giant squid. The only ones ever seen were dead or dying creatures floating near the surface. The giant squid had never been seen alive in its natural habitat deep in the seas. Scientists tried everything from putting cameras on deep sea submersibles to attaching cameras to sperm whales, but no luck. All we knew about this mysterious creature is how big it gets. Really big. The biggest one ever found washed ashore in New Zealand in 1887. It measured an astonishing 55 feet 2 inches in length. So, like the size of a house. The giant squid also has the largest eyes in the entire animal kingdom, 18 inches in diameter, the size of your typical beach ball. So imagine that eye being the size of a beach ball. Want to know more about the fabled giant squid? Get in a submarine, bring a giant tub of calamari sauce, and go find one. That's the giant squid. Here's a Goliath bird-eating spider. Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider who sat down beside her and scared the living daylights out of her because this was a Theraphosa blondie, the biggest spider on earth, measuring a disgusting 10 to 12 inches across. That's the size of a ruler. This hairy beast is the size of a dinner plate. It can be found in the rainforests of South America, living in burrows built in soggy swamps. And yes, it has been known to eat small birds, which it drags from their nests in a flurry of hairy, grasping legs and piercing, venomous fangs. The poor bird has tweeted its last tweet. Then the Goliath carries its victim down into its burrows for dinner. Not having a set of silverware, or even teeth for that matter, the Goliath has its own revolting way of devouring its prey. It spits digestive juices onto its meal. The juices eat away at the soft parts of the body, reducing it to soup that the Goliath then slurps up with gusto. The Goliath also eats frogs, snakes, beetles, lizards, bats, and baby rats, but thankfully not people. If you're unlucky enough to get bitten, the venom may sting a bit for a few hours, but it won't kill you. I wouldn't want to meet up with one of those. How about a flower? In 1818, Sir Stamford Raffles, governor of Sumatra, and his friend, Dr. Joseph Arnold, were riding on horseback through the diabolically dense jungle near Bengkulu, when suddenly the pair stumbled across something extraordinary. A giant flower more than 3 feet across. That's like the size of a yardstick. Sir Stamford and Dr. Arnold immediately took note of this most unusual specimen sitting on the forest floor. They had found the largest single flower anyone had ever laid eyes on. Later, the honor was theirs when this species of flowers was named after the distinguished duo. It was called the Rafflesia arnoldi. It's as strange as it is huge. It has no leaves, roots, or stem. It is, in fact, an enormous head without a body, a parasite blossom that attaches itself to the vine called tetrastigma. First, little blackish buds appear which swell over 9 months to the size of a basketball. When the buds are ready to bloom, each petal suddenly opens. They burst open so suddenly that people say you can hear a sucking sound as they slimly unfurl. But huge and strange isn't enough. It's also smelly. The Rafflesia has the nickname corpse flower because it stinks too high heaven with the smell of decaying meat. Why? Because it wants to attract flies, of course. It needs the flies for pollination. Wow. And the last page I want to read is probably a familiar word to you. It's called Google. But look at how Google is spelled here. Googol. The Google web page is spelled Google. It's bigger than a bazillion. It's bigger than a cajillion. It's bigger than the number of all the known particles in the universe. It's a Google. And Google is not only bigger, it's better because it's a real number. But why even think about a number that's bigger than everything there is? In 1938, mathematician Edward Kastner knew why. He wanted to show his students that a number could be fantastically large, so big that it would boggle your mind and still not reach anywhere near infinity. So, Dr. Kastner came up with an idea for a really big number, a 1 with 100 zeros after it. So, here's what the number Google looks like right here. It's the number 1, and then it has 100 zeros after it. But it needed a name, so he asked his 9-year-old nephew Milton for a suggestion. Milton realized that a number that enormous should have a name that was equally as silly. He came up with the winner, Google, and 10 to the 100th power has been called Google ever since. Let's see if we can imagine how big a Google is. Pretend you're really hungry and you want a Google waffles for breakfast. How high would that stack of waffles be? Can you picture it? You can't. A Google waffles would be 10 to the 80th light years high, or in other words, 10 billion trillion times the size of the universe. If you counted every proton, neutron, and electron in the entire universe, a Google is 100 quintillion times bigger than that. By the way, there's an even bigger number than a Google. It's called a Googleplex. That's a 1 with a Google zeros after it. We won't even go there. So now you can understand why Google has the name it has, because when you search things, you're going to get lots and lots and lots and lots of hits, and you're going to see lots of things there. So that's why they call it Google.com. And that is parts of the book called How Big Is It by Ben Hillman. Hope you enjoyed learning these facts.